Hey everyone, welcome to Talking Tokens, a podcast focused on interviewing the best crypto founders, market players, and up-and-coming startups that are changing the industry every single Tuesday and Thursday. I'm Jacqueline Melanik, your award-nominated host and former senior crypto reporter turned entrepreneur, and I'm excited to be here with you all. Now, let's get into it. Hello, everyone, or the people who are joining. Welcome to the Avalanche quarterly webinar with Token Relations. I am the co-founder of Token Relations. I'm Jacqueline Melanik, and I'm joined here today by the Ava Labs Chief Business Officer, John Nahas, and its COO, Luigi DeMeo. We were talking about his name before, which is why I'm laughing. But in addition to this discussion, we will also open up the floor to Q&A for everyone listening in. I'll remind you of that about halfway through. And with that said, let's get started with some background and context. So Avalanche, which is the primary network of the blockchain, currently has about 60 blockchains built within the network. And every chain built on Avalanche is an L1, which is a new update, and it has about 37 active L1s. This past quarter, a number of Web3 Native folks have built L1s on top of Avalanche, and we've seen major Web2 players such as Konami, Solo Leveling, and others even announce they were building an L1 on Avalanche. Super exciting times, and I'm excited to talk to John and Luigi about all of this. To start off, I want to start with the topic of L1s, because that was a core announcement that came from Avalanche this past quarter. What was the reason to switch the term from subnets to L1s? Was it part of like a greater vision or a branding reissue? Kind of walk us through that.
So I'll kick this off. It's great to be with you, Jacqueline, and with Token Relations. So hello to everybody today. Look, if you take a look back at the Avalanche white paper, it was about 6 years old now, maybe, give or take. And the initial term subnets was introduced then. And that referred to a stub network of validators that ran their own chain. They've always been Avalanche L1s. But subnets were a very technical term. They're an academic term. And people confuse them for side chains, L2s, or something else. So we always had to explain what they were. So instead of coming up with another term or marketing term, we're calling them what they really are, which are Avalanche L1s. They're your own L1, launched on Avalanche with the customization that you need, the scalability that you need for the purpose that you need, right? So they're purpose-built blockchains. They're Avalanche L1s. It's what they've always been. So we decided to just call them what they are. It's easier for people to understand. It's easier for us to explain, and it gets the point across.
And just to piggyback off of that, and also it's great to be here with you, Jacqueline, and everybody else. Fundamentally, also the technology is changing. Right, we have a massive upgrade coming. It's colloquially referred to as ACP 77 or the Etna upgrade, Great Volcano. It's really about changing sort of how L1s are spun up on Avalanche. It reduces the cost dramatically. And so the definition is also slightly changing. And so that was the appropriate time, I think, to sort of consider a rebrand. And so I think Avalanche L1s do embody what we're focused on, right? And that's people having their own chains, building their own economies, building their own communities, and being independent and sovereign.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, there's a number of blockchains for both Web2 and Web3 players to build on. But what do you think is driving a lot of these traditional players to actually come to Avalanche, use your network and the blockchain technology to, get into this space?
I think what we've seen historically over the past few years with just the broader crypto ecosystem is a lot of general purpose layer one blockchains. With a slight tweak, it's faster, it's cheaper. They're solutions which are then in search of a problem, right? It's, hey, come and build your business, your application, your need on our chain, fit your business and your application onto our tech stack. It's kind of inverted. With us, it's always been the opposite, right? Avalanche L1s are customizable. You can run whatever virtual machine you want. You can set whatever parameters you want, whatever security you want. So a lot of enterprises, institutions, government agencies, whatever it may be, have always needed this level of customization. They needed this ability to kind of control their environment or build the application or business that they really want. And in order to do so, they needed that kind of open field to be customized, right? To do what's necessary for their use case rather than kind of fit it into whatever the tech stacks exist in established L1s out there. So we've been working very closely with a lot of our partners. We always do that, something we're very proud of. And that ability is actually let them do that. Historically, we've seen enterprise chains launch a lot of applications but not gain traction because they've existed in a silo. And the feedback we've been getting that we've seen is that enterprises, institutions are more than happy to build on a public permissionless network, on a decentralized network, if they can have their permissions at the chain level. So the ability to be customized at the chain level and be part of an open ecosystem that has interoperability, that can then decentralize, that can then kind of graduate or change, is really what the market has been asking for, I think, for a long time. And that's where we've been seeing a lot of our success.
What type of customizations are these enterprise businesses looking for, John?
So some want regulatory compliance customizations, right? Whether it's a jurisdiction, whether it's privacy. Others want their own gas token. Some want no gas. So SK Planet in Korea has a gasless chain. There's a gasless relayer on the back end that runs that chain. The validator sets, I mean, you can get into so much. Some want their own virtual machine or a different virtual machine than the EVM. They can do that. Luigi can talk about all the specifics that we have that can be customized, but that's really the main point.
Get into it, Luigi.
Yeah, I mean, they want customization, but they also need to be treated like a first-class citizen. And that really goes to a lot of the work that sort of Ava Labs has spent time on like the Ava Cloud side in particular, right? So you need enterprise level software that can help you deploy a blockchain, monitor a blockchain, keep a blockchain running, have secure solutions to administrative functions. All of these things, but delivered in an enterprise fashion is important. And I think that's something that's been overlooked in the space. It's like Linux, right? I mean, I don't think Linux would have been able to get all the enterprise Wall Street banks if they didn't have somebody like Red Hat come along. And you need that, really enterprise-focused solution that's built for scale that actually helps enterprises deploy the stuff, because they frankly, most of the time are not willing to do it themselves. They need assistance. So I think that's been an approach that's really helped.
Yeah. I've also noticed over the years that Avalanche has grown to become a major gaming blockchain. A lot of games are launched on it, either, from AAA gaming studios to Web3 native ones. Internally on your side of things, is there a push to really drive home in the gaming sector? I know, as John mentioned, generalist chain, there's a lot of different opportunities there, but gaming is definitely one of the bigger ones, in my opinion. So I guess from your perspective, what do you think is really driving growth there, and how do you kind of see that evolving now?
Yeah, I think I'll jump in first. So I think a while ago, there was a decisive move to sort of go after gaming, and John and the team really spearheaded that. And it's okay to have opinions, and that was one, right? So I think fundamentally we believe that gaming assets were perfect for blockchain. Also, the demographic was something that could really more easily grasp onto something like crypto assets. And so I think marrying those two made a lot of sense. And so we have, I think, a really strong portfolio of games that are building and deploying on Avalanche really soon. Now, I've said that before, so I want to swallow my words a little bit, but I do think there is this component of games take a long time to deploy. They take a long time to build. Like, you think Play Off the Grid, they've been building that game for 5 years. And I think it's raised hundreds of millions of dollars at this point. And that looks, that's one of the most exciting, I think, blockchain applications that will deploy in the coming years. Because I think it'll bring the most mainstream users out of anything we've ever seen.
I think, we made a calculated decision a while back when gaming first started, the whole kind of play to earn craze and everything. But what we noticed was that, gamers care about one thing, a good game, right? And in the beginning, there was this focus on kind of a token masquerading as a game, right, which was a lot of the play to earn stuff. So we took a calculated bet and a decision to focus on quality games, quality studios, quality builders, and gaming specifically with thousands of users, tens of thousands of users, if not hundreds of thousands to millions of daily users with millions of transactions, just simply cannot exist on a general purpose chain. It's not, whether any chain, it doesn't matter what blockchain it is. alongside NFT mints and DeFi and institutional and a million other things, because gaming needs to be smooth. Gamers don't care about chain congestion. They don't care about why there's fee spikes. They care about a game, and the game needs to be made better by the underlying blockchain behind it. So that's where I think we've had a lot of success working with game studios such as Gonzilla and many others, because they see the necessity to have their own infrastructure, their dedicated infrastructure that serves their needs, their users, and lets the game kind of shine first and foremost. So we've got a lot of these great things coming, and we're really excited to see them kind of come to fruition. I think that'll also highlight the technology stack behind it and show what's possible on Avalanche.
Is there anything you guys could share on like what's expected for the gaming front on Avalanche in the coming months?
I think we'll see one of the more exciting titles launch in the next couple of months, and I think it'll bring. My prediction: it'll bring 1 million real active users. That's my prediction. Real people, not wallets.
I'll echo that.
Real people. That's good. We want real people playing these games, right?
It's easy to get 1,000 active wallets as bots, but I think we'll see 1 million active users.
And do you think there'll be more Web3 native, or there's a big opportunity and push to get mainstream traditional gamers, however you phrase them, into these Web3 based games?
No, I think it'll be a mainstream game that will then bring people into crypto. That's how I see what the teams are building. Like they're designed from that fashion. They sort of give them this like little taste of crypto as they start to use the application, and then as time goes on, they start to introduce them to more and more exciting things in the space. And then where it gets really fun is then when they can collaborate with other people building on chain, and this is where our Avalanche's architecture becomes interesting. Is then you can start to like take in-game assets from one Avalanche L1 and like do a collaboration or a partnership with another game and put them in the other game or whatever. Like that's all entirely possible. These assets become movable. Effectively the people own them, and that's a big departure from the way gaming was historically structured. So I think that's going to happen, and I think it'll be a landmark for the industry. Frankly, it's one of the things I'm more excited about.
You excited about, John?
Yeah, I mean, Luigi touched on it, right? I think the ability to move assets, but more so to enable payments, on-chain payments. Like people will start to use stablecoins. You can pull stablecoins from the C chain into your Avalanche L1. You can make payments. You can start to see how assets move freely within the Avalanche ecosystem, depending on the rules that they need. And I think the gamers and the people who've been quite skeptical about crypto and Web3, because I think the industry targeted them as like, oh, young, tech forward, perfect people to be in crypto, right? Mm-hmm. Well, you have to deliver something first, right? You can't just assume that they're going to jump in and become crypto natives overnight. So I think a real product that really brings people on chain, whether they know it or not first, is a great way, particularly with gaming. And then, as Luigi mentioned, right, they'll become curious. They'll start to see the benefits of this being on chain. They'll start to explore other things, and we'll work with our partners to create exciting opportunities and programs to bring those people in to try DeFi and a million other things. So yeah, it's exciting time.
Yeah, Luigi, you also brought up network upgrades, and I want to talk a little bit about the Avalanche 9000 network upgrade that was announced last week. What is the most significant features for you guys? Obviously, there's a lot of developments on that front, but for the community to kind of get a grasp on like what this really means, can you kind of dive into what you found the most significant and what it really means for the whole network?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things, right? This is, from my perspective, the largest upgrade that's ever happened to the Avalanche network, and there have been many.
That's very good.
Yeah, I think it's a very big deal. And the reason for that is, subnets, as they were formerly known, were soft launched, I think, in the spring of 2022, with DeFi Kingdoms being the first one. And that's still live today. It's still, I think, still doing on average about 500,000 transactions a day, and, without any interruption. But, that was just a soft launch effectively for subnets. Avalanche L1s, after this upgrade, will be the cheapest solution for somebody who wants to launch their own blockchain out there, and already out of the box wants to be connected to other chains, and also a sort of what I call a shared service chain, which is the C chain. right? So you already have exchange integrations, already have oracles, you already have native stablecoins, and also native assets like Bitcoin and ETH that you can pull directly into your chain, an Avalanche L1, and do so with really fast finality. So it's there within a few seconds. And so fundamentally, that changes the value proposition, because now we have the cheapest, most scalable, and then most connected chains out there. And then now they're actually cheap, whereas before they were not.
How cheap are we talking?
What's that?
How cheap?
That's a good question, actually. It depends, but I think basically the rough calculations are for every validator for an Avalanche L1, I think it's approximately one AVAX, a little bit more than one AVAX a month per validator. So it's not a ton. That's the continuous fee that gets paid to the P chain. That can go up over time, right? There is a dynamic part of the fee calculation, and that's all in the ACP 77 spec. And I think that creates like a much more robust environment for developers, because the previous model was very capital intensive. You had to acquire 2,000 AVAX per validator, and that's just a big upfront commitment. So this allows Avalanche to compete with things like Cosmos, L2s, or whatever app chain architecture that you want. But taking a bigger step back, one thing, I was thinking about this weekend. There are certain sort of moments in time that a lot of different catalysts come together at once. I think back to 2021 when sort of the Avalanche Rush campaign came out. You had a number of actually really important catalysts happening at the time that Avalanche Rush came out. That was Avalanche Bridge was coming out, which was I think best in class in terms of just clean UX. Really fast and cheap to deploy assets from Ethereum to Avalanche. And you also had Chainlink feeds going live. And then you had Aave, Curve, and a bunch of the Ethereum blue chips deploying alongside natives like Benki and Trader Joe. And so like all those things combined with Avalanche Rush, it was like a unique moment in time where, everything kind of lines up. And it feels like to me, the same thing is sort of occurring now. We have, massive network upgrade that has been sort of in the works for years. We have the 9,000 campaign, which has been very light on details so far, but more details will be coming out over time. And then I think there are a lot of people and developers excited and have been building Avalanche L1s in the background. And so I think this is also, in my opinion, has the opportunity to be another unique moment in time where a bunch of different important catalysts come together at once. And so that's why I'm really excited about this update.
Yeah, John,
I'll just add a couple things.
Yeah, from a business perspective too.
Yeah, from a business standpoint, I mean, this is very exciting for me, for the team, and especially for our partners. And I want to highlight a couple of things I think make sense, right? When Avalanche L1s or subnets were launched nearly 2 years ago, right? This was something in the white paper from day one. There was not a need to scale the C chain. It was part of the overall Avalanche vision from years ago. And there was a high barrier to entry. It was expensive. And we took time, and the team took time to work through all the issues. We refined the tech. We made sure that the deployment we made was easier. And the rollout of these chains has gotten easier and easier over time. And the interoperability is now there. So it's time to kind of drop the barrier of entry and let anybody, whether an institution, enterprise, but more importantly, the innovators on the crypto native side who are building all kinds of great stuff. Any developer can launch a chain. There was a Blockworks research article that actually talked about the cost implications of all these great things. But this is, two things for me. One, it's kind of not the completion of the vision, but this was the original vision of the Avalanche white paper. This is like the fulfillment of what Avalanche has always intended to be. We've seen private permission chains on the institutional side. We've seen permission at the validator set for public use on gaming and enterprise and loyalty, and now public permissionless chains, open chains for innovation, launching. It's an exciting time for us. But I really want to commend the work that the team did on the technical side, because I think a lot of people in this industry are really myopic sometimes, and they become very dogmatic about what the perfect tech is. And they get into the weeds, and they treat white papers and initial ideas kind of like gospel, and they don't want to to divert from it. I like to call it like the treehouse paradox, right? Like everybody like measures a tree to build a treehouse, and then they go build this thing for a year or 2 or 3, and then they come to put it back. Well, the tree is moved. A branch is broken. It's grown. It doesn't fit anymore. And this industry kind of goes down this narrative path for such a long time and focuses on building something that may or may not be needed anymore, or at least in that fashion. And the team has taken feedback from partners that exist. They've taken feedback for how to make Avalanche L1s better, how to make improvements. But importantly, one of the other ACPs as part of the upgrade is the need to, is no longer a need to validate both the primary network and your own L1. So it's subnet only validation. This opens up kind of blockchain as a managed service for a lot of enterprises and institutions. This moves away from the lock AVAX to the burn AVAX thing, which is much more cost effective and really promotes innovation, people taking chances, building new applications that might need their chain. I mean, think about all the great builders out there, whether in fintech or gaming or crypto native, that have a fantastic idea, but would have always needed their own chain to deliver it. And that's not been possible, I think, up until now. So it's a nice mix of kind of this completion, but also a pivot where a pivot was needed, and taking feedback from the community, from builders, from industry as to what is really needed to deliver kind of on this vision and the solutions that they need.
Mm-hmm. So if you could summarize how you would define the vision now compared to maybe a few years ago, going to your tree analogy, the tree has grown, it has moved. What would you say it is today?
The vision, I think, for us is many chains acting as one. Build your own chain with your own rules for your own business the way you see fit. And we provide you with the infrastructure in the background to ensure that you're successful in building whatever you need without restrictions.
I like that. Luigi, thoughts? +1?
+1. John's usually pretty good at that, so we'll let he's got that nice smile. So I think that sums it up pretty well, right? Like it's basically like build your own chain with your own rules, but don't lose the interoperability out of the box. Right? You want to be able to be connected to. Because like these systems aren't all that exciting if they're not connected.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to say, right, like we've been talking a lot about new L1s. That doesn't mean, of course, that the C chain, which has kind of been our hub for such a long time, is still not a top priority, right? Like that's where the liquidity lies. That's where the native tokens lie. And that'll be kind of the liquidity hub and the engine to promote everything. So that's going to be optimized next. We're going to focus on that. And that's really kind of the launch pad for maybe someone who doesn't need a chain, of course, right? So we're talking a lot about chains, and there's of course the focus on launching a ton of new chains, but there's also a focus on letting any builder that has any idea launch an application that could one day grow into its own chain. So there's always that too.
Yeah, for sure. I think also we talked about gaming. We've talked about Avalanche 9000 kind of network upgrades on that front, L1s, etc. And you two briefly spoke about the stablecoin adoption. And I think, gaming is a very big theme on Avalanche, but there's also a very big push and adoption from institutions. And with that, I think personally comes stablecoin growth as well, because that's kind of like a good segue in for institutional adoption. This most recent quarter, I believe, Avalanche collaborated with Agora to launch its AUSD on Avalanche. How do you kind of see this improving the user experience, and what does it really mean for institutions and just everyday AVAX users? Luigi, go for it.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So, I mean, there's a few things in there to unpack, right? With respect to stablecoins, there is definitely an institutional lens, but institutionals tend to be a very broad term, right? There are, I guess, what you can consider crypto native funds and funds that are able to deploy actively in DeFi, and those are ones that would be more apt to use things like stablecoins. With respect to institutions like banks and some of the more regulated ones, that's something that becomes a little bit more challenging in the current regulatory environment, just from what we've observed. So I think stablecoin adoption tends to correlate to activity on the chain. It also tends to correlate with how others view the actual security of the chain. You wouldn't want to store your stablecoins on a chain that you don't feel super great about. And so I think things like Agora are really taking an interesting approach to the stablecoin model. They're sort of like flipping it on its head. I'm hoping somebody has this sort of credit card, sort of like what happened with credit cards in terms of merchants approach, where they're able to change the actual incentive dynamics for an existing industry. And then hopefully that allows for, that allows for more adoption. I've historically said that stablecoins were the killer app. I think that was my pinned tweet for a long time. Basically, that's because they really are. I mean, it's the ability to move a stable asset at the speed of light or whatever, it's a little exaggerated, but really fast is exciting. And payments has always been a really exciting use case for me, but there's a lot of hard work that goes on in the background to make that get adopted, right? There's the POS terminals, but more importantly, there's a business question. And that's how do you change sort of the business level dynamics, right? In the US, for example, people get paid to spend money. So it's hard to change that dynamic. But what we are seeing is adoption in, other regions, right? Like we're holding our Avalanche Summit in Buenos Aires, and, you see, I think I saw a tweet from somebody at our innovation house the other day, and they're new to the region, and they've been observing like that you can pay with USDC and USDT at restaurants, pretty broad based. Like that's profound. That's a profound innovation that we have. And so I think if we continue to push that and we see more stablecoin providers come along, Avalanche, given its fast finality, is well suited to sort of push all that and get adopted.
Yeah, I'll say I think as an industry, we've writ large, there's been a little bit of a failure here to embrace stablecoins at the level that I think we should. And what I mean by that is we really haven't delivered on any meaningful payments updates, right, to the existing status and remittance markets and remittance products and markets for FX even, right? People still get eaten up by all these fees and by the gatekeepers that exist there. So, stablecoin growth has been increasing month over month. We're very excited about that. We've been seeing a lot of USDT, which is very geographic based, right? LATAM, Southeast Asia, Middle East, a little bit in Europe, and then USDC, of course. And now with Agora USD, it's a different type of asset, and it's going to have its use cases. And we're really excited for the builders that are building using a USD for their specific use cases. But in addition to that, we do have a lot of other FX stable coins, Singapore dollar, and many others that are coming. And I think it's really important, particularly with Avalanche, with the speed of the settlement, to have a robust kind of global fiat stablecoin market for people to transfer money. And I think where we failed on the remittances side for so long and on payments is, I can send dollars around the world and everyone wants dollars, but sometimes people do need local currencies. If you're in Singapore and you want to use the local apps, you need a Singapore dollar. If you're, in Mexico, you're going to need a Mexican peso for some payments. Not everyone's going to accept dollars. So you really need to allow for this FX kind of movement and flow and liquidity to emerge. And for that to happen, you need to onboard a lot of these stable coins. The Agora team has been doing some really great work. They're a really innovative team, and the way they're approaching it is fantastic. We recently saw the money market token for Franklin Templeton as well. So that's on more on the institutional side. Different people want to hold different assets, and different assets can be used for different things. The money market token, of course, has its yield. The Agora dollar can be used in a number of different ways, whether retail or institutional. USDC, of course, we know, and USDT has emerged as a method of payment in LATAM and many other places. So no one, even though it might be dollar pegged or something of that nature, every asset has its particular use cases. We're really excited to see kind of what people do with that.
Mm-hmm. John, do you think that institutions want more variety when it comes to stablecoins, or is it retail people?
I think with retail, it depends on the adoption, right? Like you can give someone a new stable coin. If it's not used, it's not used, right? If you're in the Middle East, if you're in Southeast Asia, if you're Latin America and everyone's using Tether, they're going to want to use Tether. I think what institutions want is assets that they know that they can use that are within their kind of compliance and regulatory frameworks, or that their customers want to use, right?
Right.
I think we've seen this with the institutional kind of flip from a few years ago, where institutions were bashing crypto and all things blockchain related, to now being at the forefront championing use cases, but also these assets, right? Because their customers wanted to see these assets. They wanted to have They want to have exposure to these assets. And the more they're having exposure to these assets, the more they're learning to use them. And I think we'll start to see more and more innovation on that front.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to institutions really diving into, blockchain technology or the Avalanche network as a whole, what do they want more of? Is it real world assets, tokenization, stablecoin implementation, something else?
This podcast is sponsored by Galaxy. If you're immersed in the world of Web3, Galaxy is a name you need to know. As a decentralized super app with an impressive 21 million users boasting over 100 million monthly transactions, Galaxy is elevating its impact with Gravity, the magnet chain for Web3. Gravity is designed for full chain abstraction, zero knowledge proof-based privacy, and rapid transaction speeds, all coming together to offer an unparalleled user experience. Gravity opens the door for developers to effortlessly build on the largest on-chain distribution platform, and for users, it promises an even smoother, more secure journey through Web3. It's not about being on-chain, it's about being on the right chain every single time. Galaxy is on a mission to onboard the world to Web3, and Gravity is the magnetic force that will propel the vision forward. Ready to launch your Web3 journey? Build the future on Gravity. Visit gravity.xyz for more information.
So as it relates to, I guess, the more regulated entities, what they want is to solve a problem, at its core. And that's really typically has been on the operational side of their businesses. Right, like if you think about how all these banks were put together over the last 50 years, it's basically acquisition after acquisition after acquisition, and stacking their tech on top of each other. That has led to a lot of inertia in terms of the ability to sort of change how those types of institutions handle their operational flows. Crypto and blockchain in particular is one of the best technologies that at least I've seen that actually can just that could just circumvent a lot of their issues. And they know that, and that's where all these POCs and pilots come from, because they know that it works, but there's a lot of inertia to put that into production. And that's because there's a lot of stakeholders. There's regulatory stakeholders, there's the Fed, there's all these different entities that need to opine before this stuff gets in production. But there's clearly been, I think, a lot of momentum over the last 5 years, and we're closer than we've ever been in terms of them actually putting stuff in production. Like, for example, JP Morgan has Onyx, which settles $1 billion a day in repos using smart contracts on an EVM. That is, in my opinion, a profound use case that changes the way repo works. When I was at a bank, you weren't able to settle repos same day; it just wasn't a thing. So that's what we need to keep seeing. But I fundamentally don't think that the innovation will come from the institutions. It'll come from things like DeFi. It'll come from sort of the actual builders on the ground experimenting, and then institutions will take some of that tech and repurpose it for what their use cases are.
I want to double down on what Luigi said. Right, I think when people have oftentimes asked, how did you guys kind of build this network up and support growth on the network? I always say we started first with the crypto native, and we started first with DeFi, thanks to that gentleman right there. Because that's where the innovation happens. That's where people try new things and build new things, and it's that crazy startup life. But that innovation that we've seen thanks to DeFi is kind of that innovation magnet that pulls the incumbents and the institutions to try it out. It forced them to innovate. It forced them to get on the train, right, and to not ignore this technology and this industry and its users. Right? If you just tried to sell to institutions and enterprises or partner with them, it would have been a whole lot of nothing and a whole lot of just feet dragging and bureaucracy, and it would have not gone anywhere. I think the great success that we had, especially from the Rush campaign and all the DeFi success a couple of years ago, really was what gave us the ability to go to these institutions and say, look what we've done. Look what's possible. Let's work together to find better solutions. And look, when it comes to the institutions, they literally care about one thing and one thing only. They don't care about innovating. They don't care about any of this stuff. Their job is to make money. And you can make money one of two ways: by saving money, or by innovating. Well, innovating takes time, it takes effort, it takes buy-in, and they're doing that, as Luigi mentioned, with all of these use cases. So when people look at POCs and go, but it's a POC, well, that's a really big deal. But more importantly, right, it's on the saving money, and that's on increasing efficiency, back office stuff, the things that we first won't see much of publicly. We won't really notice, wow, this is much faster to do this, that, or the other, but they'll save money, and that savings will trickle down to the users a little bit. But as they get comfortable with that, then the innovation starts to build on top, and then you'll see it. So it's always kind of a lagging indicator of where things are, or trailing indicator, sorry. Mm-hmm. So what you see today is what was started, right, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, a year ago. So we're really excited about kind of the cool stuff that's being done, that's being explored. The conversations today are way different than they were 6 months ago, and worlds apart from where they were a year and a half ago. So it's an exciting time.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like there's been a proliferation of growth in the past few quarters. And I'm curious, on the other hand, there is a lot of adoption, but what do you think institutions want less of, or they don't really care for because it's, not making the money, it's not making things more efficient, maybe in their eyes, or maybe they just don't get it yet? Is there certain things that you don't really see taking off in the near term for them?
I think that once again, it really depends on what type of institutions. But if we're talking about the more regulated ones, I don't think they're thinking enough about, or as much as we'd like, about new markets and new assets, and sort of creating new things that never existed. I think they're focused on operational flows, which is low-hanging fruit, in my opinion. But I think until we get some more regulatory clarity, I think they're not super excited about creating new markets and new assets, and that makes sense to me. So when that changes, though, I do think that'll be a big shift, because right now those conversations don't go very far. And from my perspective, that's where a lot of the excitement is. Being able to create new assets that never before existed. That's what gets the person at that bank, for example. That's what gets them the money to fund a whole project. It's like, hey, look, we can make X amount of money if we get into this business. Versus if you're in one of those banks, you're like, oh, we could save X. It's very hard to get that project funded, from what I've seen at banks.
Yeah. Maybe on the retail side of things too, I feel like we talked a fair amount about institutions and DeFi, but what are some use cases that you think are solely able to be built on Avalanche, or more superior on Avalanche, that are a big unlock, even, this past quarter, or that are going to be a big unlock for, the rest of 2024 into 2025?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I would say it would be very arrogant to say that only certain things can be built on Avalanche. I think fundamentally, if you want to build some stuff, you could probably build it on a lot of blockchains. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean that you're going to have the same experience, right? So I think things that I'm excited about is that I feel like consumer crypto, or consumer on chain, is basically feels like 2019 for DeFi to me. So I'm seeing and I'm feeling a lot of a groundswell of people focusing and improving sort of the UX that will enable consumer. And then I expect to see, 10 to 20, landmark applications next year that people use every day and don't even know that they're using crypto. With the advent of smart wallets, account abstraction, and the ability to sort of, onboard people with crypto right away, you're able to develop all these fun applications, whether it's with Telegram, or some of the more social stuff that we're seeing out there. I think when I think of Blackbird and applications like that, they have the right approach as it relates to how do I use a token to increase my speed to building a network. And fundamentally, crypto is really good at that. And historically, that has been really expensive for anybody building in the mid 2000s, sort of an app. If you think about Airbnb, if you think about Uber, all those types of applications, Facebook, Twitter, it was expensive to build a network. There's a large customer acquisition cost, and sort of how you can use crypto to sort of lower that cost is really interesting. If you think of TYB, for example, that's one of their core focuses, lowering the customer acquisition costs for people like celebrities. I think they recently debuted Urban Outfitters and Paris Hilton within their application. And they've actually demonstrated a very clear ability to lower customer acquisition costs. And that's all happening on the Avalanche C chain with none of their users really understanding that that's actually in the background. So to go back and actually answer your question, I think the thing that Avalanche can help enable the most is like there will be experiences that you want to sort of really customize. You'll need an L1 to do that. But not only will you need an L1 to do that, you also need to, you also want to potentially partner with other L1s or enable interesting assets to move to your chain. And you'll be able to want to connect really fast. And that's where I think Avalanche can help, make it a lot easier versus other chains out there.
Yeah, I think, to highlight what Luigi was talking about, right? With TYB, they had Glossier before that, and they've had tons of other brands and products. And what they've seen, and they've done, a study on this, is that there's more customer engagement, there's more customer retention, there's more customers returning, and those customers spend more time and time again. And they don't know they're using crypto. They don't know they're using a blockchain. It just enables a better application, right? I think when we talk about what's the killer app of crypto, we don't have one yet because there's been too much focus on the crypto side, right? Like my excitement is the thing that hasn't been built yet that we don't know that uses this technology to enable something better or something different. But on the consumer side, exactly, I think loyalty and rewards are a big thing. SK Planet, one of the largest conglomerates in South Korea, has their own chain, UPTN, and they have their OK Cashback program on Avalanche. That's the nationwide loyalty and rewards program with like 300,000 merchants. It's one of the largest in the country. But to give you an example, in Japan, there's Ponta and Loyalty Marketing. They have their own loyalty rewards program. Well, these two companies traditionally work together. If you're a Japanese national going to Korea or a Korean going to Japan, there's benefits that you have. Well, if these two chains exist with these two assets and these two rewards, you can start to swap these rewards for other rewards. And you start to see how kind of new economies emerge and new connections emerge when you start to connect chains with other chains and have the ability to move these assets across, using local stablecoins for payments or US dollar stablecoins, whatever it may be. I think fundamentally our job is to highlight amazing use cases within different verticals and different use cases that utilizes the technology to give people that inspiration or a billboard to show them what's possible, for them to then kind of take a lot of inspiration from many different things and build the thing that we don't know what it is yet that's going to really take over and be kind of our social media moment in crypto. But up until now, the consumer angle is really catching steam. We need people building great applications that people want to use that leverage blockchain on the background.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I also kind of want to segue into, the future outlook of Avalanche and what you guys are looking forward to in the future. But before we do that, I just want to remind people listening in, if you have questions, post them in the chat or the comments. We already got some good ones coming in, but opening up the door here for you guys to ask Luigi and John any questions that you guys may have. But when you two are looking at decentralization of this technology and the power of L1s on Avalanche, how do you kind of see it expanding in the near and long term based off kind of, everything that we've talked about already? I kind of want to get like a holistic view on it.
Yeah, I think, one thing I've learned in being in this space for a long time is to kind of like really like be where your feet are. Because, this space has taken more turns in the last 3 years than I would have ever been able to predict. And so I think it's important to have two things. One, a long-term vision of where the space is going. And then two, what am I doing next? All right. And focus on executing the thing you're doing next. In terms of what we're doing next, I'm excited about, it's Avalanche 9000, 9000, 9000. That's all we are thinking about in terms of like execution. And that's because, it's fundamentally one of the most important upgrades to the network. It enables a lot of developers to build on Avalanche that like they never were able to before. And we want to be able to nail sort of that launch. We want to be able to nail it. And, so I think getting all the tooling right for it, making sure there's a great go-to-market strategy for it, making sure that developers have everything they need, and like making sure that Avalanche Academy has all that content. Right, all that stuff has to be well executed from the get-go, and that'll enable, and we'll have by the end of the year, cheap, connected, fast chains, full stop. But as I think about the long-term vision, right, when I said that there's two things, long-term vision, we think that there's also going to be a need for a more scalable sort of environment for enterprises or for products that end up meeting and getting product market fit. Like say, for example, Play Off the Grid from Godzilla does start hitting millions and millions and millions of transactions a day. They're going to need an upgrade, right? Like the EVM won't be enough for them. And that's why we've been building Steadfast, the Hyper SDK, which we've done with recent testing, 100,000 TPS on a distributed test network. And we expect to continue to push the bounds of that, and we hope to deliver that next year. That will be something that we have off the shelf to upgrade these clients and these various builders who need more than what they're currently being served. And so, like when I think about the complete offering, it's you want to get started and build on something that has public infrastructure on day one, go deploy on the C chain. It's fast, cheap, decentralized chain. Now you started to develop a little bit of product market fit and you want to be able to customize your environment and your community, go deploy your own Avalanche L1 on the EVM. And then now you've really blown up and now you're sort of really moving at scale. And we also have the Hyper SDK as another offering. And so we're really thinking through, how we can scale with builders as they're deploying applications and be ready for them from the infrastructure perspective out of the gate.
Yeah, I want to just add a little bit to what Luigi said in terms of like timeline and the way we think about things. I think, we do a really good job on the medium term, on the long-term vision. I'll be a little bit self-critical here. I think we could do a better job on the short term sometimes, right? In the immediate, because we're so focused on delivering the things that we've been working hard towards on the medium to long term. The team always ends up delivering on that. We always bring things that I think are pretty exciting, and we're there now. And I think this long-term plan of Avalanche 9000 all coming together is now that long-term strategy is now the short term, and we're like head down focused on that and excited about that while we build the next medium to long-term goals that Luigi mentioned. So it's kind of like this perfect storm of everything coming together. But talking real quick about what you're asking about, Jackie, on decentralization, I think, if you take a look at the Nakamoto coefficient, Avalanche is always up there at the top, or one of the top chains in terms of decentralization of the network as a whole. And, decentralization, I think, is something that most people take for granted. You don't know you need it until it's a little too late. Mm-hmm. But we're starting to see cracks of people being able to do this, right? Previously, it was either public permissionless or enterprise chains off in its own world in a silo. And I think the ability to have a private permission chain live alongside a permission public chain and a public permissionless chain within the same network really shows what could be possible. And it shows that you can move from private permission to permission public and then public permissionless. There's a graduation path. If regulation, if compliance allows for it, you can start to see that easing of centralization, because some things just have to be permissioned at the onset right now because the law dictates it needs to be, or compliance or regulatory things do. But I think seeing, whether it's government applications or anything else, you can have a network of private permission chains that have interoperability on Avalanche. You can start to have a private permission chain talk to a public permissionless chain if there's a commonality or a need for an asset to move across those use cases. It doesn't mean that something like a USDC can't move to a private permission chain. So I think we'll start to see a lot of these use cases kind of emerge, all these applications emerge, and kind of the interoperability, which is, I think, the key here more than anything, which will highlight the decentralization on one side, but also be that kind of magnet that pulls people towards being more decentralized as well. So yeah, a lot going on.
Yeah, there's a lot to look forward to. I think also Avalanche Summit is happening next month. All three of us will be there. What are you both most excited about, other than, everything we talked about, the community, of course? Hopefully some of the listeners are joining, or many of them. Any big announcements or developments that we can look forward to? I guess that's the point of an announcement, is you kind of save it, but I got to ask.
I think there'll be no shortage of exciting things to announce, but more importantly, I'm really excited to, I've never been there. I'm really, really excited to sort of engage with the local community and the Argentinians and the LATAM, because, what I've seen from our ticket sales and sort of registrations is there's a heavy influx of local people coming to the conference. And that was, basically what I think we wanted to target. So I'm really interested to see, these are people who are using crypto every day. What can we learn from them effectively, right? Because in our lives, we're we're not using it as much as them. So what can we learn from them? And then how can we take what they're doing on a daily basis and build solutions to target them and make their lives better? So that's something I'm excited to go down and learn.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's been a big focus on the region. This is more of a regional summit, a regional event. More than the exciting things I think that we'll be announcing at Summit, I'm excited for the things we'll be announcing after that are a byproduct of the things that we're announcing, right? It's not like, hey, let's go tell you all the great stuff that's here. Mm-hmm. Like, we're going to talk about the great stuff that's coming and that's happening, but more so the things that come after it, I think are going to be equally as exciting, if not more exciting, as the year continues. On a personal level, I'm just really excited for really good steak. So
yeah, really good steak. Yes, I agree with that. I've never been as well, and I'm excited to engage with the local community and the Avalanche community there too. To wrap things up, we got some good Q&A questions. One of them was, are L1 fees to the primary network going to be burned, or are they going to be gained by validators?
Yeah, that's a great question. So currently in the spec, they're going to be burned. But I do encourage and would love to see an Avalanche community proposal or an ACP from anybody who does believe that they should, or a portion of it should be distributed to the primary network validators. I've historically argued for that. I think that it makes sense for the long-term sustainability of the network that a portion of the fees coming from the pay-as-you-go fee do also go to the primary network validators. So I encourage somebody to submit an ACP proposal for that.
Yeah, love that. John?
I agree with Luigi.
Perfect. Question number 2. Are most partners waiting for Avalanche 9000 to launch their product or upgrade their app, or are they waiting for Hyper SDK because they require more throughput?
Yeah, so I think this goes to sort of what I said before, from the standpoint of I think 9000 is what will unlock more just chains on Avalanche in general, and then Hyper SDK will be the one that allows them. It'll unlock some new use cases, but it'll also help graduate ones that have got adopted. So I think it's 9000 for sure will enable more chains, just by virtue of making it more accessible.
Yeah, I think if people are looking forward to that Hyper SDK and kicking the tires there and planning on it, I think the most immediate thing is the upgrades coming through 9000. We've been working with a lot of partners with the hope and the understanding that that's probably going to go through, and if it does, what that means for them. So there's been a lot of parallel tracks going on, a lot of work behind the scenes to get people prepared for what that looks like if these do go through, and when they do go through, hopefully. So a little bit of everything, honestly.
There you go. Okay, cool. And lastly, Luigi, this question was for you, and it was an actual question asked. What are the ingredients for a perfect spaghetti sauce?
Yeah.
You have to share.
That's good. That's a good one. I mean, the ingredients for a perfect sauce, it really depends on actually the ingredients, right? Like where you source the actual stuff, like where you get the tomatoes, how you make them, etc. I think I tweeted, every end of August, early September, family tradition, we sort of make a full year's worth of sauce from tomatoes. And so that's probably where this question comes from. But the ingredients are very simple. Depending on what you want to make, a little garlic, onion, salt, pepper, red pepper flakes, and the best sauce ever, and some olive oil, and you're done. It's simple. And basil, of course. That's simple sauce. If you want to get more complicated, you can start throwing different types of meat in there, etc. But that's the base, always. But you got to use good tomatoes.
We need a Luigi cooking class.
Luigi's going to be slinging pizzas at Summit, so people are coming. We got him a pizza oven. He's going to be making pizzas and throwing them out there into the crowd like merch. It's going to be pizzas flying.
Sounds like a lot of work.
I'm kidding. That's not really happening.
Hey, maybe. Anyways, Luigi, John, thank you for taking the time today, and thank you to everyone for listening in. Looking forward to talking again at Summit and doing this again soon. Have a good one.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thanks.